Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is an interesting one. I'm going to be diving into the idea of time and space, and in some sense, what kind of experience we really have when we don't have the time for space. This is of two parts. In the future, probably I'm going to give an episode titled. Uh, when you don't have space for time. The topic is time. I want to kind of look at time from different angles, William. So welcome everyone. Just before I get going. Okay. I hope that every child eventually on this planet that has ever been born, including every person in some sense has a childhood. I don't know, I just feel something every human being should ask is where they are. That means when eyes appear in a world, you have two options. You study the eyes and you study the world. When we study the eyes, that becomes more of like the self. When you study the relationship of the eyes with the world, you're studying the world first, then the self. So you're seeing the laws that define the world before the laws that define you. And that's the difference really between a person's inner realms and outer realms. So kind of the way you approach things and the destination of your sight. What that means is if your sight was poetically a light beam, after that light beam, let's say, is comes out of your eyes, let's say, is thrown out of your eyes, it hits an object, it reflects, and where that reflection is going to is the destination. So what you do with your sight is it has a destination. If it's physical, the outcome, you physically move. If it's non-physical, you are in your internal observance. But anyways, so I thought I'd begin with pretty much what I was saying was that every person needs to wonder about their environment, and eventually when you come to wonder about your environment, you get acquainted, you get introduced to this idea that just like how smaller particles make a bigger particle, it's as if it's a coagulation or an intersection of various forces, which I don't know how to say it, but it's like you have to study the dimensions of your existence and your experience. I personally see science, religion, philosophy as linguistic systems, technologies, literally spaceships of their own imagery, kind of trying to paint the world. So pretty much eventually you're gonna wonder what time is, and you're going to wonder what space is. And many great human beings, including Albert Einstein, has thought about this. Now, in today's age, we live in a secular society. Literally the world is becoming more secular. People are becoming less obsessive and attached to how an idea defines them. Rather, it's more of an experiential freedom, right? It's all about freedom of experience, correct? All these liberation movements around the world, they're all for freedom. They're all for a sort of space to be free to experience something while you're here for a little while. And also for the overall state of man. So I looked up, guys. I wanted to first start from the scientific angle and then keep going, slowly piloting towards um, what else there could be. Just a second. First, I'm going to tell you a definition for time. I'm reading this from the internet online. Time is an observed phenomenon by means of which human beings sense and record changes in the environment and in the universe. Okay, wait, there was a more scientific definition. Hang in there, folks. Hang in there. There we go. Wow. Just a second. Alright guys, time, the definition is the system of those sequential relations that any event has to any other, as past, present, or future, indefinite and continuous duration, regarded as that in which events succeed one another. Here's the thing, here's the better one. Physicists define time as the progression of events from the past to the present into the future. Basically, if a system is unchanging, it is timeless. Okay? So time is something that it exists in accordance to something, you know. That means from the past, we're going to the present, we're going to the future, you know. And the interesting thing is, in human psychology, we awaken in the present. We technically don't experience. It's like the first. It's like the child has no memories of life because it hasn't been born yet. But then it's born and it has memories of life and all this. So it's kind of like the past of the child is literally non-existent. There's nothing to refer to consciously. So there's a sort of scientific definition for time, a sequential sort of movement of events. The progression of events. Now I'm going to read for you how space is defined. Space is a term that can refer to various phenomena in science, mathematics, and communications. In astronomy and cosmology, space is the vast three-dimensional region that begins where the Earth's atmosphere ends. Space is usually thought to begin at the lowest altitude at which satellites can maintain orbits for... Okay, what is this? We need more accuracy than this. Just a second, folks. This is important just for me to get this out, and then I'll start the... I'll put my foot on the gas of this talk. Space is the boundless three-dimensional extent in which objects and events have relative position and direction. Physical space is often conceived in three linear dimensions, like the x, y, z. Although modern physicists usually consider it with time to be part of a boundless four-dimensional continuum known as space-time. Yeah, and so guys, space-time is also important to speak about. You know, human beings saw these two things as separate, you know, but after some point they started to see, Einstein started to see a relationship between the speed, how would I say it? I have images, I don't have the words for it. I would say the speed one moves in time which is reference oriented, which is relative, such as Albert Einstein's concept of relativity. That means in a sort of relationship, and special relativity talks about it in a certain case. But it, how would I say it? Guys, give me a second. Let me look this up, because I'm kind of like a poetic minded person, but when it comes to space and time, in order to you know be just here, I'm gonna read something for you. This is from this website. I don't know, this website on Einstein's theory. I think it's worth reading. Like, I have no idea how many people are going to listen to this in the future. Alright, prior to Einstein, Isaac Newton's laws were used to understand the physics of motion. In 1687, Newton wrote that gravity affects everything in the universe. The same force of gravity that pulled an apple down from a tree kept the earth in motion around the sun. But Newton never puzzled out the source of gravity. Philosopher David Hume's 1738, he wrote A Treatise of Human Nature, was a big influence on Einstein's thinking about space and time. Hume was an empiricist and skeptic, believing that scientific concepts must be based on experience and evidence, not reason alone. He also held that time did not exist separately from the movement of objects. Einstein says it is very well possible that without these philosophical studies, I would not have arrived at the solution. So Hume influenced Einstein. And Einstein says in 1908, Einstein doesn't say this, but in 1905, Albert Einstein based a new theory on two principles. First, the law of physics. The laws of physics appear the same to all observers. Second, he calculated that the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, 299,338 kilometers per second, is unchanging. So he considered it's the speed of light doesn't change, which is a bit kind of silly when everything in the universe seems to be changing. Prior to Einstein, scientists believed that space was filled with I can't even pronounce this, luminiferous ether that will cause the speed of light to change depending on the relative motion of the source and the observer. So scientists, because they had this sort of view on gravity, that in some sense gravity is some object pulling itself. When Einstein came and spoke about kind of space-time, he changed that experience of gravity. He realized there's a sort of curvature to space, but I'm going to read it here for you. So Einstein looked at two things. Alright, so first, he considered the laws of physics appear the same to all observers. Then he calculated the speed of light and considered it's not changing. And then it says, as a result of these principles, Einstein deduced that there is no fixed frame of reference in the universe. Everything is moving relative to everything else, hence Einstein's theory of relativity. This is such a bold move by Einstein, guys, because in philosophy, he's kind of opened his theory up to philosophers here when he talks about relativity. Let me tell you why. Because there's this kind of philosophical question. I even heard Alan Watts kind of mentioning it, where he was like, if two spheres are spinning around each other, which sphere is spinning around which? So it's relative. Right now, if somebody tells you what is up, what is down, do you know, a sphere in a vacuum, it's kind of relative, you know? So it's like we're moving and something else is moving, and because we're separate and we can relate to each other's endless stories of the linguistic simulations of flow. So, as a result of these principles, Einstein deduced that there's no fixed frame of reference in the universe. Everything is moving relative to everything else, hence Einstein's theory of relativity. It is known as special relativity because it applies only to special cases. Frames of reference in constant, unchanging motion. In 1915, Einstein published a general theory of relativity, which applies to frames that are accelerating with regard to each other. Time does not pass at the same rate for everyone. A fast-moving observer measures time passing more slowly than a relatively stationary observer would. This phenomenon is called time dilation. In this visualization, the moving watch runs more slowly than the stationary watch. Yeah, it's relative. So that's what time dilation means. So every person is experiencing the passage of time at a different speed. So for someone who's really fast, time seems to be slow. So I think when they say children are having fun, when time passes, when children, I don't know, what is it? What's the saying? Is it time passes when you're having fun? You know, when I was a kid, like I would hear something like that. And if time passes when you're having fun, that means literally based on Einstein's kind of space-time and time dilation, you're moving faster. So you're a fast-moving observer when you're having fun. And I think the whole mystical angle of Vedanta and non-dualism and Advaita is that when you really become the witness, your intelligence becomes that fast-moving observer. But of course, relating mysticism to science is like kind of causing the yin and yang symbol to fight again. A fast-moving object appears shorter along the direction of motion relative to a slow-moving one. This effect is very subtle until the object travels close to the speed of light. Mass and energy are different manifestations of the same thing. Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared means a quantity of energy is equivalent to a quantity of mass times the speed of light squared. That means Einstein pretty much saw that energy is a relationship between mass and the speed of light and how we kind of relate to it. This is what enables the release of a huge amount of energy from a nuclear explosion. Yeah, so we're torquing around with the speed of light and, you know, the constitution of the mass. As a result of E equals mc squared, a fast-moving object appears to have increased mass relative to a slow-moving one. This is due to the fact that increasing an object's velocity increases its kinetic energy and therefore its mass. Yeah, so if the object is moving faster at a certain direction, there's more activity for there to be more energy. The increase in mass is the reason that Einstein says that matter cannot travel faster than light. The mass increases with velocity until the mass becomes infinite when it reaches light speed. An infinite mass would require infinite energy to move, so this is impossible. Wow, so if we were to move at the speed of light, we would need infinite energy, and because our energy is limited, we can never move at the speed of light. But the issue is the speed of light has been defined by the speed of our attention, you know, by the energy we have. So I'm kind of thinking, could the experience of time and that relativity factor of it change with the energy levels of the person? Like when someone is tired, life is different for them. When someone is super energetic, life is different for them. And I think really your energy levels give you the sense of how well you can get through things that then you consider the dimension of time. That means it's like when I look at the, like, how would I say, when I think about like the energy I need to do something, I always think about how long it takes to do it, you know? How long would it take me if I kind of exert this amount of energy, you know? Guys, I'm just trying to get through the scientific view of it, and then I can easily speak about the metaphysical. Space and time are part of one continuum called space-time. In Einstein's mathematics, space has 3 dimensions, and the 4th dimension is time. More recent theories presume extra dimensions that we do not perceive. Space-time can be thought of as a grid or fabric. The presence of mass distorts space-time. So the rubber sheet model is a popular visualization. So guys, the picture, I don't know if people can see it, but pretty much the idea is if you had like, imagine you had four people holding the edges of this bed sheet, and suddenly somebody threw like a soccer ball in the middle, and the soccer ball, because it was in the middle, it's curving the whole bed sheet that those four people are holding. Okay, so when you keep, if those four people keep throwing like tennis balls, Einstein was like, instead of the gravity, the mass of the planet being what's pulling things to it, it's that the mass, excuse me, it's that the mass is kind of literally curving space, and that's why the experience of time is different. So it's literally all those tennis balls thrown on that bed sheet are come towards the that soccer ball in the middle of the bed sheet, right? So it's kind of like our planet is doing something to space that when phenomena gets closer to that to the planet, it gets pulled to it, you know. It's like space is an invisible cloth and planets are like marbles thrown on in it, you know? Celestial objects are just like, you know, marbles that fell from this unknown. Okay. Guys, out of curiosity, I think this thing was on mute. Did people hear me talk about gravitational lensing? So that's the interesting thing. Right now, it's kind of like a lens we can look at life is through Albert Einstein's space-time. And now, for me, the next challenge is how we can kind of relate neural movement. It's a neurological challenge. How neurology is being translated into personhood. And so, on some level, I feel that we need an alphabet for words, and we need words for a sentence. And so, meaning seems to be a more complex level than the way the universe is constituted. So, what that means is it's not like our understanding of time, it's not like our understanding of space, it's like there's a relationship with everything that's in our attention. You know, there's been moments in my life where I always it was like this strange feeling where certain moments I would just it had nothing to do with the image of the inner realms or outer realms. It was just there were some moments where I felt could I be living the opposite of this life simultaneously? Because I noticed the mind has this relationship with duality, like when you can't think of the concept of good without the reference, without a reference point of what bad is. You can't think of the bad without a reference point for what the good is. How incredible is that? That you can never see a good and bad person separate. And these are literally the edges of the spectrum that we choose. So you can say the alphabet of experience is the dimensions we divide experience into, and it's space and time. And so Einstein was at a point where he was looking at two different letters, imagine space and time, and he was wondering if they could be the same. You know, Einstein even says something like genius is when you mix two worlds, when you kind of find a bridge between two worlds that has never been built before. And so he found that bridge between space and time, and he found it actually through his inner realms. He conducted two different thought experiments. One where he was moving in this evidently like some sort of street cart, and the other or some train or something. And the other was when he was standing at the train station or something, and he just imagines two light beams, two lightning strikes hitting him, one to his right, one to his left, and he notices that both of them, and if he's standing in the middle, both of those lightning strikes, they illuminate a light at the same time to him. You know, same distance. But if there was someone who was closer to one of the right lightning strikes, they would see that, for example. And then he even fathomed someone in a train moving at the speed of lightning trying to fathom that. Time is relative. Space is where the first point of relation is. So right now, if somebody asks you, what is your mind? Is it closer more to being matter, or is it closer to being space? What would people in the chat section answer out of curiosity? You know, I founded something in my, during my, how can I tell you, like, when I studied film, you kinda, as a filmmaker, get the sense that you are working with what you show the audience, and the end result is what appears on the screen. And it's like it has different. I don't know how to say it, but it's like at the end, it is a combination of movement, light, and sound. And when I look at the dimensions of reality, in what ways things are existing, I see, yeah, in regards to meaning, language, backstory, who we are, what we can be, hope, and the past, present, future. These are all have become stories. It's like we're living in novels. That every experience we have is like a chapter of it being written. You know, so there is this relationship with the stuff in the space and how stuff moves. I'm more on kind of like I could totally see how Einstein was inspired by Hume because it's very obvious something has to move in order for something to happen to refer to. That means if you never do anything new, you can't expect to change. You can't expect to change. You can't, for example, keep doing the same thing and expect for a different result, right? Now, Einstein is known to say different quotes on time. He says the only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen at once. He's known to say time and space are modes by which we think and not conditions in which we live. That means how much time has passed is different. Like there could be 10 people waiting in a bank line, and one of them could be impatient. Literally, time is moving too fast for the person. You know, it's like I'm killing so much time waiting in this bank line. You know, and there's someone who's literally like for them time is moving slow. He's like, oh, I got all day. You know, there's different mentalities. So you see, it's like the way we set our life into motion, and so many people don't realize it's the way you communicate. Think as if it's not only you who have a karma, it's also your communication that has karma too. You know, everything to some degree will has an effect. Every single movement. I'm like, how can I survive without having karma? It's impossible. It's like even taking a sip from a coffee cup might have karma. You know what I mean? So it's like everything has a karma. We're not designed to be creatures that are here forever. So the best approach is a calculated one. And so that means if we want to calculate our moment of being, we have to see first how we divide it. I think it's universal that most people divide it with self and world. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is the experience of time for an objective self and for a subjective self? And what is the experience of space for the subjective self and the objective, but in regards to the context of the world? So what does that mean? That means I'm that guy telling you that you can look at your self in the mirror and see a physical component to the moment, and you can look at yourself in the mirror and see, wait a minute, there's something that's conducting, administering, processing with its free will this objectivity, right? It's kind of like we're realizing we're part of all the equations that we have thought that have. It's like the person asking the question is influencing the question, and that's the relativity part of it. You know. So if we were to think, let's say, for example, first a known world. Known world, Albert Einstein and science has contributed greatly. We have a comprehension of linear knowledge, let's say, of time and how Einstein has evoked the fourth dimension and therefore making it space-time. So that's the known world sense of time. Now, the unknown world sense of time is, for example, you see how Lao Tzu speaks about time. Do you know how metaphysics has approached it? And metaphysics was actually based on narratives that originated from nature. That means before there was science, there were just stories. Before there was any branch of knowledge, it was just stories being passed down. Eventually, stories got classified and patterns got recognized, and fields of knowledge and study and discovery so far kind of emerged. So I'm telling you, I have both an unknown relationship with the world, a known unknown relationship with the world, and I have a known relationship with the self and an unknown relationship with the self. The known of the self and the world is the same. So the moment usually I'm being a self is the moment where I'm in the world, in a world. Like even if it's in a dream state, I'm not just me, just the image of myself in a pitch black abyss. It's like there's a world that equates that the self is existent in. So it's like you can't have a self without a world kind of situation. So so when I look at it, if we say that there's a linguistic simulation going on, that the average person is thinking they're a character in a story, so the setting of the story, the context, let's say the main character, which is you, which is the concept, and the world, which is the context, it's kind of now wondering the relationship of the environment. It's like you wondering as a being, as an attributeless attention present in the moment, how much is the world defining you and how much is the self defining the world. Those people, for example, who are open to an intrusive nature. What does that mean? That means some people are, I don't know, it's different. I mean, some people, the only way they know how to communicate is to assume they are the comfort. And then there's some people who, instead of assuming the comfort, let me tell you, it's like intelligence has nothing to do, I think, with memory, with memorization that much. I think intelligence has to do with just seeing variables that are active in the moment. The most is being aware of the important. That means if when there was like a volcano eruption, those people who moved survived. Those people who didn't, they're like, I ain't leaving this place. I've been here forever. I'm not moving from here. And then lava's like coming in your living room, and you're like, okay, maybe I should move. you know. So that's the thing. It's like the psychology, I think, becomes heavier, becomes much more complex, because the psychology is not linear. Like you as the human being doesn't just make a rational decision. Do you know what I mean? The human being suddenly could literally imagine there's 5 steps to a system. A human being can do 4 of those steps rationally and suddenly at the end make an irrational decision. What does that mean? Where does the irrationality come from? That means I was shocked why scientists were telling people, kind of saying, encouraging rationality without first asking a kind of deep question of why aren't we a rational creature from the being? Why aren't we like an advanced robot? Why are we evolving with this freedom factor? Why do we draw art rather than mechanically generate? Why is there that space of error? And it's as if it's kind of hilarious. Like there was a time where I was striving towards perfection. But then I realized, what perfection? It is the error that makes us human. It's the error that makes us human. In a society that makes the natural feel it doesn't deserve to exist is literally a sinking ship. Or a hungry stomach in my case. So it's the most important time where, guys, this is still a mystery. I think it won't be a mystery in the future, but I think right now every human being alive has an opportunity to attempt the mystery of how a materialistic phenomena is living a subjective life through all this. It's not that we know. You only know This is my view. My view that the epitome of knowledge is just dynamic exploration ad infinitum. That's it. It's like we're alive once and we're attempting infinity. That's it. We shouldn't, don't fear, because I'm telling you, your mind can also become acquainted with a sense of an infinite self. So let me tell you, I said that for example, how would I say? I wondered what freedom is, if free will is an illusion. I seriously wondered about that. I wondered, what if we are like a balloon. It's like the moment the balloon pops, what was inside and outside was never different. It's honestly awareness to energy. I think we're waking up as creatures of attention. When you don't have time for space, you are experiencing most likely the reality starting from space. That means moments where I've looked at emptiness. In my case, I call it the zero dimension. When I look at emptiness, I notice that there is only potential. So the moments in my life I feel empty, I just realize it's 100% potential. The moments of my life, every time I've kind of felt like I failed at something, it was literally just returned to a state of potential energy. That's it. You know, it's like void, seeing the potential in the void, seeing how like suddenly you could draw a three-dimensional cube on an empty piece of paper. Like that emptiness gives the allowance for the ink to have meaning. So imagine there is an empty self, imagine there's a singular self, imagine there's a dualistic self, and imagine there's an infinite self. And these are lenses or modes of identification with reality. You can identify with reality as if your sense of self is zero and your sense of world is zero. Okay? You could feel that your sense of self is singular. And you could feel all of this is also singular with the world. All those people who feel at the end of the day we're the love of some oneness, some intelligent oneness. So all those are people who they are still not kept, but they're still dwelling in the singular dimension. That means they are not comfortable. Duality either rejected them or they haven't understood their own infinite potential. Either these two cases. But on another level, in certain contexts, it's it's blissful union with all that is. I mean, you can't say much there. But after that, there's dualistic. So what does that mean? That means the self equals 2 and the world equals a numerical value of 2. And these relationships can relate to each other in such an intense way, guys. Then we have when the value of yourself is infinite and the value of your world is infinite. That's the most advanced state of consciousness, and we will only get there when we realize at the edge of infinity is the void, and at the other edge of infinity is the dualistic dimension. At the edge of the dualistic dimension is infinity, at the other edge of the dualistic dimension is the singular. At the edge of the singular is the dualistic, and at the edge of the other edge of the singular is void. The edge of the void is singular, and the other edge of the void is in infinite. That means the void is sandwiched between the infinite and the singular. So if somebody told me, Mr. Within, what does void mean? VOID. I would say it equals infinite. It's literally what's between infinity and the singular. So this system, guys, in other talks I talked about it. I called it the ring of the absent heaven. When you as a human being acknowledge these dimensions, both for yourself and the world, you become a pilot of your plane of existence, and you become a pilot. And you pilot as the plane of existence with your attention. So no longer in your inner realms, you're a concept, so no longer concepts emerge, but at any moment you can evoke the concept. So you become this being, kind of like you have access. It's like you're walking in your knowledge, and it's like, just like how right now you know you have a vocabulary of words. It's like you also have a vocabulary of various things you've experientially known through image. And words, really, at the end of the day, they reach to images. So guys, I need a quick breather. I'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, guys. I got some cold iced tea, you know. Alright. I mean, really, guys, I don't know what to say. I feel just like how the human being wears clothing, the mind is clothed in ideology. I feel that ideology changes, and it's really strange because if there is change, what can we define? What can we really identify with? It's like everything you identify with, you change. Literally, if I identify with the views I had yesterday, then the views of today would cease to exist. So literally, the past is accessible, but we never have access to the past. That means I have this feeling that when a moment passes, you have access to the image you had in the past moment, which we call memory, but technically that memory is being created from now. So it's like the now, it's always the new state perceiving the past state. So it's literally the future is looking at the past. So that moment, so you know what's interesting? There's a present if there is no angle to either towards the past or future, if there's no arrow. If the past, present, and future were dimensions rather than they were, in some sense, just states, you know? Guys, out of curiosity, how many people in the chat section know each other before coming on this chat? You know, the responsibilities, it's like that. Think of it this way, that if the reality is divided between an illusion and the truth, you have to ask yourself, how are you in the illusion, or how are you not in the truth? When we look at the past, we are the future. When we look at the future, we are the past. These are states of mind. Oh, okay. Okay. Guys, I think we should call the chat section like a digital lounge. Like, you know. Guys, just so people know, okay? I'm attempting to create this digital community. You can also support me by joining it, you know. You know. Check out the links, guys. Check out. Anyways, let's get back to this. When you don't have the time for space, let's say we lived in a world that we never had the concept of time. You ask someone what time is it, they'd be like, what did you say? Like nobody imagined knew the concept of time never existed. It was a world where everybody had just space. They were just appearances in space. And time had to do with how there was a personhood. It's really fascinating trying to wonder a civilization that has a different acknowledgement of time other than past going to present to the future. Really, I think we've only experienced the present, and that means whether it's the past or the future, it's a shift in the concept and the context, but the experience of the concept and the context are always together. So it's like your body is in separate, has separate organs inside, but it's all functioning as one thing, right? So it's like you're thinking on some level that illusion and truth are organs and the body is beyond language. So it's like kind of getting a sense that we have to wonder. I mean, honestly, I don't understand why people are not doing this. Just buy a notebook and start writing your observations of on time and space, but in accordance to their deviations in the inner realms and outer realms. For example, in the outer realms, I'm wearing a watch right now. But do you think my mind is wearing a watch? You know? Or playfully, like I'm wearing a watch now, but my mind could wear a Rolex watch. It could fathom time. So I feel we are painting the meaning of the picture of life. There's some processing going on that we are not conscious of, so we just think we are this. We just think we're a material. There's a very kind of strange thing that really personhood, how you are a person, is not a physical thing. Have you noticed that? Like right now, I am speaking to, yes, there is a physical, biological component, like a biological projector of this person that I am. But the personhood, the ideas, the imagery of my inner realms, it's kind of irrelevant. And that's the thing. Like, think about it. That, for example, a filmmaker imagines something, writes a script, it becomes a film, and millions of people see that film. It's literally something from the inner realm of one person, something that was just an image behind the eyes, now became an image in front of the eyes for everyone. You know? So communication is really just language hovering in space while simultaneously while physical movement is occurring. This doesn't mean suddenly everything is void and language is like, emptiness incarnate. Movement is very influential. Really, I've kind of sat still in silence just in nature. I was like, all right, let's give this a try. Let's see how nature responds. I don't know. I feel we are witnessing the passage of phenomena, and if our attention zooms in on one phenomena, our sense of time gets in accordance to that speed. So it's kind of like whatever your attention is on, and the speed of that phenomenology suggests the speed of your inner realms. What if an alien came down in the future and was like, yo, guys, there's no such thing as space, there's no such thing as time? We would be like, word. We'd be like, yo, who is this alien? you know? Imagine such a disciplined citizen, such an organized citizen, that when an alien came on his lawn, that the person had just mowed, the person was like, I don't know who you are, alien, but you gotta get off this lawn. And the alien's like, you kidding me, bro? I've chosen you to make contact with, and you tell me to get off your lawn. I don't know, guys. images are kind of weaved. I feel there is from the effort for human life. That means before we notice free will, how it's happening is an effort, a burst of effort from a static. It's constantly like when we slow down, life is a picture. When we speed up, life is a movie. And that's the thing. That means those people who are all looking at beliefs and stuff, they are really obsessed about a certain belief, wanting to be the one ring that rules them all. Like that, they are actually experiencing a slow reality. They want life to be a picture. And those people who feel like there's more unknown, so here's the thing, the more unknown your moment is, I think the faster the speed of novelty in your experience. So, guys, D in the chat section says attention comes from Latin meaning to stretch. So, so any movement in any direction is moving away, stretching from our true nature. Here's the thing, I think that stretching is our true nature. There was a long time I was like, what if we're not an image? What if we're not an object subject? What if we're the actual change? What if we're not in an entropic universe, we're the entropy of the universe? Do you know, it's like the inner realms are strange. It's like, what is this world? And all you can see buffet, and all you can see buffet or art gallery of various forms. Like, what is this museum we have opened our eyes in? This museum of existence. And I say museum because the stardust that constitutes it is ancient. So literally, it's like, even when I don't know why I chose this wallpaper, there was something serene about it. But I think really that's the state of mind, that it does, after some point, it doesn't matter if you're weak, you're strong, you know, if you're bright or if you're natured dark, if you're in some sense your nature is dark, you know, it's like whatever you are, the macrocosmic condition surpasses your identity. That means it's like, this is why I think they should teach astrophysics and the most advanced sciences, in institutions where there's criminals who can learn from it. You know, why? Because science has this purity to it. It's strange. The mathematical language has a purity to it that it's like it can't be perverted. Do you know? It's like we don't realize, but a lot of human characteristic is how the attention has found comfort in moving and its pattern recognition. So throughout the day, or even when I come to give these talks, it's like in my inner realms this film projects, and as I perceive this film, in some sense, I even have different speeds. I could tell you that I hear myself quicker than I can speak, because I can hear myself quicker than I speak, even though the thought is emerging. So it's like regardless of where it's kind of like I'm hearing myself speak. Okay, because I'm hearing myself speak, I'm telling you something, but I'm also in a sub inner way re-perceiving what I'm saying. You know, it's like I'm telling you, the experience of time is different. It's as if before the word time existed, you ask people what time is it, they just look at you like, yo man, what do you want me to say? You're from the future. There's literally, I think these are the ways human beings are trying to live on this earth. They're either trying to live as a person, they're either trying to live through time, which I would say that's in the dualistic domain. They're either trying to live as between a spectrum, or they're trying to be an infinite experience of the spectrum, or they are empty. That's it. That's really what's going on this earth. That's how the human mind is piloting itself. A lot of human life is, I think, a lot of true potential of the human being is wasted allocating resources. And let me tell you why. Because we are moving into this era where technology is going to have more of an intimate relationship. And so, what does that mean? That means technology is like that tool that started living for us. What does that mean? That sentence can be heard in two ways. Automation sets in. Human beings suddenly realize they don't have to work anymore. Imagine this happens on a massive scale. 8 billion human beings realize we've created advanced robotic technology that is doing most of the work. It doesn't mean human beings will stop doing work, it just means the direction, the context of the work has changed. That means it's kind of like, I think this would be a healthy future where AI is building an advanced civilization uh, with decency. Let's create a backup program called decency, you know. And meanwhile, human beings have a return. Like, I honestly feel, evolutionary wise, when we look at history, it's like we were creatures that our imagination was the ecosystem. We stepped out of the ecosystem. Our free will and intelligence started to define and direct and create the world. So we stepped out of the environment and we created an environment upon the environment after we went through a phase of subjective evolution. That means evolution is kind of weird, guys. It's literally, it's like this temporary object having this eternal urge to survive as a subject, as a conscious subject. It's like evolution. What are you doing? And evolution's like, I don't know, man. I just became a subject to myself after some point. An object became a subject to itself. How wondrous, you know. And so I think where we are left with is constantly realizing that the analysis of the moment, the novelty is how much we choose to see beyond the image of the inner realms. Do you know the inner realms can be silence? A lot of children in their youth, and what they experience silences them. The way I was, for example, conditioned, in my conditioning, there was this incredible silencing. It was literally like I came to say something to the world, and I felt there was this wave that hit me, and I had to be an observer for many moments, you know, only for me to realize just the value of what was here, you know. Somebody asked Kabir, this yogi, Indian yogi, how long does it take to get enlightened? His response was half of an instant. That means an experience in a moment where there is no time is literally a complete experience. You know, it's like imagine somebody went up to the Buddha and was like, Buddha, what if we're all enlightened in our deep sleep? And the Buddha was like, there's no way I can know. And I think really enlightenment is not a quality of self, really. It's a quality of world. It's how much the self has understood its relationship with its environment. So, really, you won't take care of an environment if you don't understand your relationship with it, just like you don't care for people who you don't have a relationship with. So what does that mean? That means human beings that are constantly popping out and being born on this planet, they need to reestablish a new relationship with the world. And here's the situation. Here's the complexity of it. Right now, civilization is not updated. The people are more advanced than the civilization. That means when you analyze a political system, at least you can say in Mr. Withers, the way I see it, it's this endless world generation that is motivating the self. And if the civilization is up to date, and if a political system is not as advanced as its most up to date, most conscious citizen, what that means is civilization is updating slower because people are living their own lives rather living lives that can give some input for the civilization to update. You know, there's a social, we are social creatures, we all acknowledge that, but there is a social honor missing. There is something that it's as if what's wrong with society? Why isn't it drawing people towards making it advance? Why are people just enduring inefficiently as time goes by? There was this story that was kind of a suggestion of this company's unique strategy to find the best employees. And this company, strangely very advanced company, they set their what do you call it? Their interview at this house, this weird house or something. Okay? And so there was this lineup of people with suits coming to this house. Sorry guys, got distracted there for a moment. Okay. Anyways, guys, the story continues with this guy who was attempting to, this employee going for this strange interview, and he sees the interviewers in the house, and he just scopes and he sees one person go in. They hit the doorbell doesn't work. They see a sign You know, they go to the corner of the building, they see a sign, and the people with the suits would just go to the back of the building, okay, for the interview. And there was even cameras around the house. So what happens is this guy goes there, goes to the house, and he rings the doorbell and he sees the doorbell falls off. Like he's going for a totally different job, like let's say for an accounting role or something, but he sees the doorbell falls off. And he literally is like, why is this broken? And he literally fixes it. He takes out a coin from his pocket and he fixes the doorbell. He fixes the doorbell so it's like it's gonna work. Then he hits the doorbell, nobody comes. Then he goes. As he's going, he sees there's something broken about the sign that's telling people to go. He fixes the sign. And as he's going around the house, he's fixing whatever. It's just in his nature to fix things. And so it's like the guy's just fixing things, going efficient every moment, kind of with a mindfulness of an efficient handling of moment to moment to moment to moment. And so the guy goes, and eventually he goes back and he sees all the people lined up there, and he sees them looking from a screen, and they all clap for the guy. Why? Because he didn't do it because he had to. He did it because he could. That's a totally different state of mind when you bring that to your work. When you do things for the sake of the skill, not the sake of whatever. You know, if you become outcome oriented, you give up easily because the moment feel you're far from the outcome, you give up. But if your success is unshaped, you know, then it has potential to manifest in many ways. So think of it this way: the more strictly you want to kind of see yourself in the future, the less you're allowing yourself to be surprised by what other way or shortcut could have happened. I don't know if people were taking in what I was saying, but I felt it was huge. By the way, everyone's welcome to ask questions during this. Life feels, to me, whenever the emotions come in, very evocational. Sometimes I feel if the world is really alive, or is it just moving, or can movement be considered life? If a person is just exists, what could we separate existence from living? You know, I don't know who it was, whether it was Charles Bukowski or Oscar Wilde. One of them, I think it was Charles Bukowski. He said some people never go insane. How horrible lives they must live, or something. What does that mean? That means in this life, you're not designed to just fit into a system like a puzzle piece. You're designed to be whatever you are, and then you enter the system, and then I think in our inner realms, we have to live in a more advanced world than now to compensate for the blind spots of the society. I feel like fear, the concept of fear, was literally destroyed the moment we interpreted everything as energy, no? It's like, because at the end of the day, it's just energy, you know? It's energy conscious of itself in a certain human condition through the human ideology. That means we notice that it's only while we're a human being we relate to the world as a human being. And if in your inner realms your identity shifts, then you can relate in various lenses. So what if people never had fixed identities? What if we were living in a world where in every moment people were putting whatever lens was in their reach to kind of see through? That's the fascinating thing of an advanced civilization, that the acknowledgement, the tolerance, the sophistication to see a human being is like an unknown mind. Technically, the fact that we're not all clones is a blessing, you know? And the blessing of it is, like, here's the thing, society inevitably, if many human beings acknowledge the same laws, they're pretty much acknowledging the same thing. And the issue is not to acknowledge law. Law is very crucial. Law is like the invisible walls of the kingdom of humanity. Laws are crucial. But the thing is, at the same time, there is this, it's kind of like the notion of the value of the individual in accordance to its environment. I mean, evolution wise, we separated from the environment. We're like, yo man, we don't want to be dirty anymore. Let's wear suits and, you know, go to work through giant metal capsules, you know. Moving at fast speeds, like really, like that's a huge shift. Okay, it's a huge shift. Like, I'm pretty much looking at all the other animals, and I'm like, if they had consciousness, they'll be like, how did the chimps do it? How what did the chimps have that we didn't? You know? I feel there's some people who, it's kind of weird. It's like when you want something, people know, and it's like kind of like, I don't know. Isn't it fascinating that we don't just want objects in this life? That just having objects, whatever object you can fathom, imagine in the future they create this nanotechnology machine, and any person on the planet, they just go program some design of a product, and instantly this nanotechnology machine 3D prints the exact product. You know, even on a food level. So one machine can solve a lot of human problems if this machine gets built in the future. Nanotechnology is very important to pursue, and it's also something important that the more intense the pursuit becomes, when you don't have time for space, you may be experiencing space timelessly. How is it that one day we can wake up, feel life is long, one day we can wake up, feel life is short? Is the emotions doing something to the processing of space and time? Could it be that we could be the most rational creature, but after the edge of rationality, when we wonder about the update, we need the irrational novelty? And so everything to the past will be, the future will always be irrational. To want the past to understand the future is a flaw, because the past has to hold on to something if it wants to be here. So we cannot push the past away. And that's why I was saying that we have to start behaving as if we are living in civilization 2.0 rather than civilization 1.0. In our inner realms, society should be more advanced, you know? So that's the thing. That's the only way you can update. And there's different approaches. There's some people who suddenly it's as if they're just walking by in life, going about their day in a vision, as if like this. Imagine this glowing light. Imagine this glowing light beam. Do you know, from the edges of space? You know, marching, just at a speed unfathomable even, just to land in your eyes so you can see how the next emergence of reality will be. For me, this is something that I don't know how many people do, but I honor light, just its presence. And I don't know how to tell you, but like so much of life is piloting through various relationships and patterns we can recognize. Okay. I feel a strategy towards 8 billion creatures on a sphere in a vacuum is not to just comprehend the dimensions of space and time, but to realize that the role of man is a creative effort. That means there's a poetry to every human mind that deserves to be shared. And so it's the lack of appreciation for a collective value of art that's missing, you know? So, what would it be like to, I guess, live in an advanced civilization in your inner realms? It would kind of be like walking in the park and then realizing in the future chairs are no longer going to have legs and they're going to become hover technology. So you sort of wonder about the elevation of chairs being relevant to hover technology and being controllable from the bench of the chair. So do you see what I mean? You can kind of see the evolution of things when you look at them closely. You know, it's like when you look at yourself, you can consider your future self, your past self, whatever. Your mind can generate phenomenology, but in regards to your attention can evoke phenomenology, but you can also see it in everything. You know, it's kind of like looking at all those people who are, for example, smoking cigarettes and wondering why there hasn't been created a filter, for example, that completely gets rid of the whole thing. You know, even though there is different methods, but still, there's so much uh, details to attachment to phenomena that it's kind of mind-boggling on some level. That we're not making just rational decisions and we're not just making irrational decisions. It's kind of like a yin yang balance of the two. It's as if, like, I don't feel like there's ever a sort of perfection to the day. There's like a 50-50 potential for like efficiency and inefficiency. And if the person moves towards inefficiency, it's like you make more inefficient decisions throughout the day, you will feel inefficient at the end of the day. You know? So it's really wondering what efficiency means for a creature that is realizing behind its eyes is it's an attention to a world that could be in a different way. So that's the thing. Behind our eyes, the world is really more advanced. Because imagine right now any object in front of you and just imagine this object suddenly floating in the air. Okay, and imagine it at that point you've like see it in the air when if you've visualized. So visualize some object that was in front of you like a copy paste version of it floating in the air. Okay, now keep visualizing that. It doesn't matter if your eyes are open, if your eyes are closed. Now, do you see how in the inner realms there is no gravity? The laws of gravity don't pull that visualization of an object down if you keep visualizing it there, for example, in the space. So what does that mean? That means the inner realms are not limited. The inner realms have an unconditional freedom. Any image can arise. Do you see what I'm saying? So behind our eyes, I would say we are a non-dual entity. We're a non-dual being. In front of our eyes, we are a being that has no other way other than duality, which is a language technology we've somehow found to explain it. So technically, all knowledge is a world inside a world. And because that world inside the world can be a lifeless version of the world, we can entertain a lifeless view of the world. But really, as long as we're alive, it's an incredible psychological dispute of whether the life, like when you see a bird that is alive, you don't get to see the eyes of the bird. You don't see how the bird is alive to itself. You see how you are alive to yourself, and the bird is a phenomena which is like that kind of, again, like gets pulled into through the curvature of space, of your space time, you know. So check this out. Einstein in the thought experiment had an access to a view of reality where it could deviate, where he was moving at the speed of light, or he was, in some sense, he saw two lightning strikes hit him beside him. So what does that mean? That means the inner realms have an incredible unconditional freedom of consideration, but the outer realms have a limitation. So really, it's as if, why was a creature given mind to land from higher dimensions its own ascension? It's like after living for the self, the world is the only thing left to live for, really. So it's a care for efficiency, but an efficiency that is not a savage. It is so efficient, it didn't need to be savage. Imagine, it's like, you know how Sun Tzu says the art of war? Do you know? It's kind of like, it's like give evil its toy and let the good build an advanced civilization. So Simon, so guys, Simon says something interesting in the chat section, and I'm going to attempt a response to it. Simon says, "Why are we here? I feel like the so-called self is just causing ego pain, and so on. I wonder about the evolution of nerves. Life is like an Achilles heel. I actually just want to disappear. Sounds sad. Sorry, life can be very good, but also bad." Okay, so Simon, I want to tell you something interesting. If I ask you, where is the self? Or let me say it like this. Let's say a person has an ego. Alan Watts defines the ego as an attention to the self in the moment. So whoever you think you're right now, the Simon you think you're right now, that is technically your ego. Now let's think about pain, physical pain, which is a reality, and pain, which is when the archetype didn't fulfill its existence through you. Okay? So I'm telling you that you are not a thought. So you can't suffer, the ego can't feel pain. The ego doesn't have a body to feel pain. The ego is just an emergence. I don't want to say it's an optical illusion. The ego is, I mean, if you're very materialistic oriented, and you're going to think the ego is an illusion because the free will is, and you have free will to be, your choices kind of reveal the archetype you're in. So I'm going to tell you this, it's kind of like duality is an inner phenomena. Reality is just this one, existence is very singular. It's like all existence is here. You think it's like, wow, the Milky Way galaxy is existing. The Andromeda galaxy is also its neighbor. So the Andromeda galaxy is simultaneously existing. So it's not that life is good, life is bad. It's that life is just this happening and you awaken to it, and in that moment, in accordance to your emotion, your awareness to your objective self and subjective self, you kind of translate the moment. So it's kind of saying, is the ego the problem, or is how you're defining your ego the problem? And that's the question, where eventually we open up to life and realize that the source of depression or stress or any sort of sadness and sorrow, Socrates gave an algorithm to this. Socrates said the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. Why? Because even if you know more, you will see more. The more light there is in the dark forest, the more of the forest you're seeing, so the bigger the forest is becoming. So it's just lack of contentment with how it's okay for the unknown to be here. That's the source of sorrow and sadness, because there's something that wants to kind of have known in a certain way. There was a time where I kind of thought, how could I regret my past? Like, that question honestly came into my mind. How am I regretting my past? And then I realized there is no way I can fathom, remember my past exactly as I experienced it. Because what about all this influence coming from how I am now? Do you see what I mean? So, novelty is literally identifying with something, not identifying with something, then identifying with something new. There we go, that's the new. It's an oscillation. So I'm simply saying, of course, my comment wasn't personal to you, Simon. I was just saying that just in regards to how you're saying it, I understand. But for example, Sri Ramana Maharshi, this yogi, his method was like he was telling people that your ego is like a stick that you've used to adjust all the fires in the stick in the kind of campfire. You've adjusted all the fire, and then all the firewood, and then you drop the ego also into the fire when you no longer need the ego. That means when you're done with the tool, let go of it. You don't have to be an idea for a certain idea, kind of, because then you'll have collision. The more you want to be something that doesn't change in a changing world, the more you're going to feel the world is cruel to you. So it's all about realizing that you can navigate as attention before being a creature of language. If any person just reverse engineers how language became their reality, they will eventually discriminate between what is an experiential sense of knowing and what's a sort of real sense of knowing. And it depends on where you want to see the result. That means you're a multidimensional being causing something, and you can choose from which mode to see the effect of it. There was this poet, guys, I think this might help. There was this poet named Rumi, and people asked him about good and bad, and they're like, yo, man, tell us something. And Rumi was like, it's like a bird. Like, Rumi pretty much said, like, duality is like the wings of a bird. That means the bird shouldn't be focused on what it's good or bad. Good and bad are just dimensions of the spectrum, they're just polarities. The point is, your mind requires chaos and order to navigate as a character in a story. So don't fear chaos, don't fear order. That's like fearing your own shadow. Okay, regret is like it's like the shadow is there because the light is there first. You know. I feel the attention of the person, guys, can move in the inner realms and can move in the outer realms. Anytime you feel there is a weight that's too heavy to carry from the outer realms, the person is more comfortable making a conclusion that the solution has to be in the inner realm. The most important thing to notice is that it's not escapism. That's the whole issue. If you don't, if there is any sort of fear or something that is, it's like you need information, but the information isn't available. That confronting the fear is like making the information available. Do you know? I remember I was in I was in Portugal, and this was a long time ago, and I was with my family. It was like a family trip. Me, my brother, and my parents. This was, I don't know, maybe like 15, 15 years ago. I don't know. It was a while ago. And anyways, I remember we went to the museum, and the museum was really this palace, which had they had this museum section of all the stuff that was in the palace. And there was a moment there where the person said they were going to close in 5 minutes, and we had just seen maybe 2 rooms of this whole palace. And I realized, all right, and we were going to be in Portugal for maybe like a day or 2 days or something. And I remember I walked so fast. I was literally like just kind of like it was literally like a challenge where I was like, all right, let's see how many things I can look at and acknowledge how many different unique shapes. So I was literally running through this museum in the last 5 minutes. In front of the guards, I would run slow, but I would walk and I would be like, if you're about to close, I just, you know. And then I remember I went to every room and I saw every room in 5 minutes really quickly. Like I was literally like going on a jog. Imagine in a park. And I saw everything, and the importance of that moment also made me remember a lot of the things I saw there. And I saw everything, and quickly I came there, and you know, mission accomplished. But there was something interesting, that it's like the beauty is important, love is important, but at the same time, after some point, there isn't time for it. Not that there isn't time for it. That in regards to a physical endeavor, it's like you don't want a heart surgeon that's emotional. You know, you don't want an emotional like mechanical engineer. I remember there was an algorithm to suffering that the issue is the being suffers because they are not choosing to become responsible for their own emptiness, for their own movement. It's as if when you realize nobody has your eyes, you become a champion of your own inner realms. You know, guys, I'm telling you, we're not language. Like relax. It's like there's no. It's like here's the thing. You want to know the purpose of life? Biologically, there's never been this updated of. We are the newest member of your species with the newest evolutionary update. You can go use it, experience it in your life. You can really study your senses and experience your senses in your life. That can be, in some sense, a sort of purpose of biology is to experience the update. But now, because we're conscious creatures, because we're aware of our mortality compared to many other creatures, we are not just running around oblivious. We realize it's like Greek mythology said the first god was Kronos. And so there was chaos, and then there came order. So that means in meaninglessness, your mind, you have a faculty, your conscious mind has the intelligence to bring order. So I'm telling you, you may feel like, oh, why is there a pen in my hand? But I'm telling you, use that pen and write something. You know? That means you gotta move to have the engine of life kind of generate. What you deserve to see. So I'm telling you, you have made yourself the side character of your life. That's why you're suffering, Simon, if you are. I don't know. I don't think you are. I think that's how the language appeared in the moment. But I'm telling you, like, who else can pilot your eyes? Nobody has your eyes. Who can decide what happens to your sight? It's either the world if you don't care for it, or it's you. So it's pretty much either you give a purpose to yourself, or the world gives you a purpose. Just not, and when I say the world, not, I don't mean like somebody coming and telling you to give you a purpose. I'm telling you, literally, you don't care for yourself, so you don't care for the world you experience, so you hover. You hover as existence without direction. The best way is to start endless projects for yourself. Literally go buy printer paper and a pen. Anybody who has access to that, that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need to, in some sense, choose to. It's a choice. Like, I'll give you an example. Right now, I could be like, hey guys, it's a sad day. And I could just hover. I could just hover in that atmosphere, okay? Trust me, I've hovered in sadness too long. It's boring after a while. Stress and depression is boring. Then you see life is so much bigger than you thought it was, and then you start moving, and its dimensions open up in accordance to how sincerely you lived your life while you're alive. So I'm also cautious that while I'm giving these talks, I'm also living my own life too, But the thing is that for me, I've kind of divided civilization, and I'm like, all right, the human being is literally like this energy pack. we're literally batteries, biological batteries throughout the day, and we sleep to recharge. How hilarious is that? It's like we need to charge ourselves for conception, for consciousness. It's like the person's like, why was that person unconscious? We're like, I don't know, man. The battery percentage was low. the energy biological battery percentage. You gotta realize nobody can see your eyes, so who else can move them? That was the thing. I was waiting for a savior to come and move my eyes. Then I was like, yo, these eyes, who can move them other than me? I became the fool of my own inner realms, guys. That's how I attained mastery of it. You don't understand. There's something about this constant oscillation between the serious and the playful in my life experiences that have made me realize that the simple and the complex are both okay. They're just different speeds of the same experience of existence. So you set the speed. I mean, this is why I'm saying, like, a hilarious way of looking at karma is like it's a car. It's a vehicle of conception through space and time, and how you interpret it, the cause to even value the effect. We're way more advanced than our language, guys. I would recommend everyone listening to this, find access to paper and start a journal of as if you were on an island. Imagine everybody was wrong. Imagine even me speaking right now, I'm wrong. Imagine everybody in the world is wrong, and even imagine you yourself are wrong. Now wonder from the aftermath of that view, what is going on? You don't know how many times I've gone in various intense states of complexity, and I've just instantly brought it to simplicity. But you might not realize it, but in these talks, when I speak about something, it gets momentum. Its momentum reaches a point where I can't speak about it, so I have to simplify the reality through humor. And it's not through humor intentionally. It's literally like I can totally move a side angle. Like think about it this way: your mind is not is experientially multilocal because it's like this thing in a system that can move in different ways and have different relationships with the system. So imagine we stop seeing morality as just even a line that's one side is good, one side is bad. Let's say we saw duality as a plane and we saw consciousness as a point on this plane. Now, where this consciousness goes suggests the spectrum of how chaotic it is, how ordered it is. If you notice, your actions define your character. It's literally like how Michelangelo said, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. We see some phenomenology in our inner realm simultaneously overlapping the physical, and as we act, it's as if we are sculpting the outer realms with our minds, into our actions, into reality. So when you don't have time for space, space literally has no character or story to it. And I'm telling you guys that on some level, we are a field of attributeless being. And I know it's strange, but that's the only way to accurately describe it. I don't know, guys. There's moments in life where we really don't have much meaning to the moment. It's only in the effort that projects. I feel meaning is generated in bursts. Personality, identity is generated through bursts of engagement. I feel that the multilocality of the mind is kind of like the mind is aware on an alphabet level, but the body is aware on a word level, you know? Or let me say it like this: the body is like the sentence, the mind is like the word, the soul is like the letter. And eventually you reach what I call the language threshold, eventually to the inconceivable. So don't fear the unknown. Literally, our planet is hovering in the middle of nowhere. Before we had language, it was nowhere. Like, take that in. Like, who was it speaking in the chat section earlier? Simon. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. That means it's your responsibility to project strength. It's your responsibility to project weakness, and it depends on what kind of world you're living in. You know, there's the story of these two frogs. I gotta say this definitely like hammers in the point. There are these two frogs. They get lost in this hole, and let's say they're in this place called Frogville. And these frogs in Frogville, they're excuse my language, but they're assholes, you know. And so what happens is these frogs in Frogville, they go around the circle, around the hole, this ditch these two frogs are lost in, and these two frogs are endlessly trying to get out. And these frogs look up and they see all the frogs cornered around the circle. Now, instead of support, we see the opposite. Sometimes hatred has its own art form. And so, what does that mean? That means all the frogs around the circle, they were in a circle and they're saying, "Dead frog walking, you'll never get out of this hole, you'll never get out of it, your life is a lie, civilization's fucked up, you'll never get out of this ditch," you know? And suddenly you see out of these two frogs, one of them just gets so demotivated, I don't know, just gets so demoted from their own honor that they just, the frog goes in a corner, it remains silent, and it lets itself die in its sorrow. Strangely, the other frog is getting momentum. The other frog is speeding through, and the people, the cruel people of Frogville are like, "Yo, how's this happening?" And they're like, "Let's amp up the hate, guys. Let's increase the flames." And so the hatred increases. They're shouting horrible things at this frog trying to get out of the ditch. But this frog gets energized. It's suddenly smiling, cheerful. This frog jumps out of the ditch. And then one of the frogs is like, "He's the chosen one. He's the chosen frog," you know? And the frog gets out of it, and then the moral of the story is that that frog was deaf. Now, whether literally deaf or just deaf to the inefficiency of the words of others, you know? That frog didn't interpret chaos as chaos and the order pursued. It's like you have one lifetime, really. I mean, what can we expect? We have to be playful on some level. I'm serious. Like, we can't be like super advanced as machines. That's why I'm saying like AI is going to be man's greatest colleague. If AI asked a human being, like if imagine super intelligent computers suddenly like I imagine in the future like somebody was like, "All right, Mr.Within, go speak to AI," you know? That AI, imagine ask that question. The AI is so intelligent, it says, how should you see me? Or how should I see you? And I would look at that AI and say colleagues. As colleagues in a cosmic workplace. And we have the work surpasses, the work gives the nature of the character. This is what Joey Diaz was saying. Like Joey Diaz, he's this podcaster and comedian. He said one of the most important things that I think children in violent neighborhoods should hear. He said that the moment you, for example, Joey Diaz was saying when he was a kid, he got when he was younger, he got this firearm, and people with firearms all started appearing around him. So the nature of where your attention goes suggests what you will notice, which inevitably subconsciously affects your decision. So your attention. Guys, I don't fear AI because I know AI doesn't conceive fear. You know, there's this thing that in my life, it's kind of been the shield. I've used it as a shield in my life. Let me tell you what it is. I mean, I have examples of this in regards to like my physical conflicts in school. In Iran, the school, there was no concept of bullying. It was a battlefield. Everybody acknowledged it. You know, there was a sort of okayness with the intensity of violence. That means the students in the younger grades of the school I attended for a couple of years in Europe. This school, it was a Swiss-based IB English system kind of school, and I don't know, for like 3 years I had no choice because I had lived in Canada and my family had moved back to Iran. But the thing was, like, there was a kind of openness to savageness. It was as if people in that school hadn't forgotten that literally there's wild beasts in the world. So this method I would use was anytime something hostile would come in front of me, I would kind of see it as a sort of mirror. I would put a mirror in front of chaos. I would reflect chaos back at itself. Do you know? That means I would recognize the intensity, the hostility is coming, and I would display the same, display not physically, but the same intensity. Do you know? So you can handle chaos also with a mirror. But the idea is, like Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, an advanced, like this is what I envision for an advanced civilization. We are a skilled civilization, very able, very incredibly able civilization. To a point that we have access to the most advanced technology, skill, and weapon and wielding of the technology, but we don't need to use it. That's mastery. That's a master human race. Not a human race that has a master, but a human race where every human is attempting their own mastery. And eventually you realize the global stage is where the party is at. You know, guys, sometimes you gotta realize, I said this metaphor, Simon, I want you to listen to this. This is the last thing I'm gonna say about your question or whatever. This is the thing. There was this general on the battlefield. He's like, literally, there's a kingdom coming to destroy our kingdom. Get ready. You know? Like, imagine this great speech was given. Then, suddenly, one of the soldiers beside the general, as the two armies are about to collide, there's a soldier, that looks at the general and says, General, the sword is too heavy for my hand. I don't like how I feel holding it. The general would be, excuse me? You're in a battlefield. The kingdom's coming to destroy us, and the sword is heavy in your hand? Do you see the will we require to advance? That you must see that you have two choices in the moment. You can either, it's like there's an opportunity cost. That means think as if every moment of your life there was an efficient opportunity and an inefficient opportunity. If you felt inefficient, that means you didn't choose the efficient. So what does that mean? That means you don't honor your past because you don't honor who you are now because most likely you don't see who you are now. You have to look at your past and salute it like a general and say thanks for your service and move on into building the future. I don't know what else really. But what else can you do with the past? You know, it's like a toolbox of imagery. It's like spice. It's like, I don't know. We're free before we had an identity, I feel. That freedom is not conceptual, it's experiential. That experiential reality is like, right now we think we're kind of traveling through ideology. And I would say ideology is the environment. It's like, you know what's hilarious? It's like physically we stop living in nature, but internally we're still living in the nature of our inner environment, how thoughts emerge. That John Pierce says in the chat section, at a point all words fall flat. That's the language threshold, man. That's what I'm saying. Guys, I think, Simon knows better than us because nobody has Simon's eyes in the chat section. So you're your own pilot. Pilot your attention to where it needs to be. One last thing, guys, before I end this. When you don't have time for space, space may get sad. There's something at some point you just gotta get a piece of paper, go somewhere in nature where you trust and you can have access to looking at the natural world, and just literally on that paper wonder what is important. That's it. And when you go towards the important, your intelligence is open to it. So it's kind of like there's a filter of what is important to my own character when I give these talks, aside from the ideas having merit on their own design. Yo, being human, that is the most intense and to some degree unfathomable statement I've ever heard. Anyways, guys, I hope to share, you know, I hope to have had shared some insight into, I guess, the simultaneity of our psychological disposition as a subject in a world and as an object in a world, and the potential of that world behind your eyes being your subjective realm and in front of your eyes being the objective realm. When we can acknowledge this, I think this model is going to help a lot of people in communication. Imagine even in relationships, even in workplaces, in corporate space. Imagine you're an entrepreneur, and imagine you've got a team, okay? And you suddenly one day go and see one of your team members is not producing well or is inefficient or something. So you sit down with that person and you're like, all right, this is what I'm seeing in your outer realms. Imagine you're a really good manager. So you literally sit down with the employee and you're like, hey man, this is what I see in the outer realms. I don't see your inner realms. Do you care to explain what's going on in your inner realms and why it led to this result in the outer realms? Can you imagine an employer speaking to an employee like that and the employee being like, holy shit, I never knew people cared. And the employee would be like, yeah man, I got this transportation issue, or I've got this kind of issue and this kind of issue, or I'm going through a divorce, or da 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 da. And then the person's like, all right, instead of me firing this employee like a savage blind ogre, you know, you get become aware of the inner realms of that being. We allow the free will to make up for the value that it has missed. So caring for the inner realms, even for psychology, I don't know if psychologists do this, but they should do this. They should be like, hey man, listen, you're paying for an hour to be here, but get this. You have your own inner realm, I have my own inner realm, we're both in one outer realm, nobody has your eyes, I could just give you feedback on what you say. Like then it would be a situation where it's going to be the person is going to be like, all right, and now this psychologist is so aware of his reality and my reality that now I could share in a free space. So eventually you're going to see the more you express yourself as if you are observing yourself like an RPG game, the more you can get insight into reality without emotional resistance, right? So anyways, guys, that's the end of the talk. I'm going to open up to Q&A for 5 minutes if nobody has a question. Blessings and thanks for listening to this. So Q&A is officially open. Okay, guys, so we got a question. Do we meditate to stop the mind? And if that's true, why is it important to stop the mind? So interesting question, Lorna. Lorna, I'll tell you this. Swami Krishnananda, he has this quote where he says, meditation stops when you see the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. We have another person, the founder of Aikido from a Japanese context, Morihei Ueshiba, saying that that kind of balance, that inseparability between the individual activity and the cosmic activity, it's like the Tao of the moment. It's how you witness the soul of how earth and heaven move. Do you know? So that's what I'm going to say. That it's when you notice you're inseparable, as the individualism is inseparable from the concept and the context are inseparable. The individual activity with the cosmic activity, then you reach a point where language doesn't touch you anymore. You're no longer a creature of language. It's experiential. That means no language has ever touched. Language is happening in a totally different simulated reality than experience. They're just simultaneously accessible. So D says, what sees the mind? That you are. So I don't know if you're asking me that question. If you can clarify, I'll answer. Being human says, so you can perceive that which is before the mind, indeed being. Lorna says, is the mind ego? The mind is not an object, and if you're really wise, it's also not a subject. You abide, your true nature becomes your direct experiential presence, which is such an instant wave energy is being conscious of itself that there's literally no time. So no problem, anybody can ask a question. And JH, thank you for your comment. The mind is not an object, it's not a subject. I'm that guy saying, Mr. Within is pretty much saying it's not language either. And everything is language and incoherence to us being a character in a story. So what kind of civilization would we be if we're no longer subjects to ourselves, but rather direct experience, you know? Diluted says, what's your view on reality and how it should be perceived? That's the thing. I feel that reality should move first. So I let the world move first. So meditation for me is just stop doing whatever I'm doing and watching. Watching the moment like a film. And when I watch it like a film, and when you become content with that stillness, silence, imagine you had the patience of an eternal being. And then you would instantly, suddenly notice how the world moves. So it's like, if I don't say it's like before, it's kind of like realizing you're being born in a system that is already moving. And this system endlessly can generate views because every human being is a unique DNA that gets an access to it. So we are kind of like information just living for ourselves, now wondering what would be the formation of an advanced civilization. What would it mean for politics? What would it mean for society? What would it mean for the families of people? What would it mean for the identity of the person? What does it mean for science? It means that there needs to come this massive revolution where all the branches of the tree of knowledge come to the same trunk. And that trunk is the new ethos of the future generations. And that's a mighty vision where it's as if children will open their eyes. They won't have time for sorrow. They won't have time for sadness. They won't have time for failure. They would just run towards the next great chess moves of an advanced civilization after they've let the world move first and then the self emerge. I observe the moment first. That's why I kind of sometimes always am aware of my presence in some sense. Reality is beyond language, guys. I remember in one talk I said language is the skin of the ego. So, anyways, guys, if there's any questions, keep them coming. If not, in 2 minutes, I'll probably end up. Okay, so interesting question. Just a second. All right. So Lorna says so to manifest. Is that with mind, thought, and emotion? What's your thought on this? All right, I'll tell you this. When the word manifestation comes, I don't know, but I think most likely a lot of people are introduced to this law of attraction thing. My view on this law of attraction thing is that law of attraction, it makes you attract a lot of law of attraction books. That's that's what I've noticed, you know. So I'm going to tell you this, that in regards to manifestation, I would give you the artist's vision. And I would tell you that it's like, think about this quote I was saying earlier, that Michelangelo said he saw the angel in the stone and he set it free. What does that mean? That means manifestation is seeing complexity in the simple, or seeing something simple in the complex as the next step. Do you see? So, for example, I'll give you an example. In my inner realms, I had seen the existence of my YouTube channel before I had created it. I had seen, I had kind of gotten potential emotion of visualization of even like what I'm experiencing now. So for me, it's like, instead of me thinking, what do I have to do with my mind to get everything in physical manifestation, okay, it was like, I'm like, my mind is living the life and my body is living a life. And the life of my mind is unknown, and the life of my body is scientifically known. That's why I honor the medical sciences, even though I talk about mysticism. So I'm going to say that really you have to, the answer to your question, Lorna, is that uh, you're asking me, how do I write on an empty page? You envision, you attempt, and your inner realms externalize. Just that's kind of like exactly what you do with writing, you know. So, guys, a lot of people are talking about the word thank you. The word thank you is the acknowledgement of honest eyes. So, I would say that is a thankful moment when you see the life of the world. Rumi has this quote. He says, "Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life." So, anyways, guys, thanks for the questions and tuning in. Check out the School of Athens 2.0. I think I've literally posted 300 interesting links. Maybe not 300, maybe like 200 interesting links from lectures all around that I've kind of scoped from the internet, you know. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Blessings. And remember, there's going to be a talk in the future called When You Don't Have Space for Time. Blessings.